welcome to episode 149 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Lydia Creech,
Nathan Smith,
and Dylan Moore.
And in today's episode, we'll be talking about movies we saw this week in part one. And in part two, we will be continuing our Young Critics Watch Old Movies series with 1944's Meet Me in St. Louis. But let's go ahead and get into movies that we saw this week. I'm going to kick us off real quickly because I don't have too much to say about this, but it's also a new release. It is Rough Night, the comedy from Lucia Aniello, as she wrote and directed it. She co-wrote it with Paul W. Downs. This is the ensemble comedy that stars Scarlett Johansson, Alana Glazer, Kate McKinnon, Zoe Kravitz, and Jillian Bell. It's kind of, I guess, one of those, Hangover knockoffs. This one has an all-female cast, so I guess it's a Bridesmaid knockoff. If you want to read more about this movie, Andrew wrote a review on cinematary.com, but I was kind of looking forward to this one because of the people attached to it with directing and writing. Lucia Aniello and Paul W. Downs are kind of two of the creative forces behind Broad City, which is one of the more creative and innovative, at least in terms of visual comedy, TV shows on right now. I really enjoy the work that they do there. Alana Glazer is one of the stars of it. And plus, you kind of had this broadcast of really talented, just comedic actors. Kate McKinnon could honestly, if the movie was just her doing stuff by herself, and she really, it would still be really entertaining, because there's a few moments in this movie where she just kind of steals it from everybody else and runs with it for a few minutes, and it's incredibly entertaining. But you also have Jillian Bell, who's kind of gotten to, she's been known from the 21 Jump Street movies and various other comedies. I think she's in Neighbors. And then you have Zoe Kravitz, who kind of in the same realm as Scarlett Johansson, who I don't see do just straight comedy all that much. And of course, Scarlett Johansson, she's known for being in these big movies, Marvel movies. If you checked out Andrew's video essay on the site, you'd kind of track her career that way. But she's never really been given a chance to do this, to be in something that's just kind of a straight comedy role. And I think for the most part they succeed in that. Johansson's kind of playing the straight guy, compared to a little bit more off the wall roles by Jillian Bell and Kate McKinnon. But for the most part, it's a pretty standard looking comedy and kind of written comedy. The story is that Johansson's character is getting married to a character played by Paul W. Downs, and this group of friends who went, they all went to college together, and they're reuniting in Miami for a bachelorette party. And it's called Rough Night, so things go awry when they bring a stripper over to the house, and one of them accidentally kills him. And so now they're all drunk and drugged up, and they're trying to cover up the whole thing. I think I was a little let down because, like I said, there's these people who are very talented behind the scenes with this, but at the same time, it felt you could feel the push of the studio, and kind of you could feel its heel on kind of tampering any sort of anything remotely creative. I think that for the most part, like I said, this is a pretty standard comedy in the realm of the Neighbors movies and the Paul Feig comedies. There's not as much of the improv element. I feel like you don't have people like Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig in this, where they're just kind of improvising stuff. I feel like Kate McKinnon is probably the closest one to that, but I don't know, it just feels so kind of stilted. That I think that the overall message of the movie in this look at this insight into kind of female friendships and how just friendships in general change over time is interesting enough. But I've also seen it done in more engaging ways. This one is just kind of standard, and there's some funny moments, but at the same time, I don't like. It's been 2 days since I saw this movie, and I don't know if I could like name, oh, this scene was, recount a scene for you that was just incredibly funny. I think that all the stuff kind of is entertaining in the moment, but then goes away, which I feel like is indicative of most studio comedies that are being put out now. And so that it just kind of let me down, because I think Anello and Downs are two very talented people, and they've shown to really have a knack, judging from their work on Broad City. But it seems like a lot of that was not carried over, and this was more just a vehicle that was made possible from, based on really the star power that in kind of the concept. And that's kind of a bummer. I think that I really was hoping that this would kind of take off a little bit and be somewhat of a hit, so that these, a lot of these people involved would get a chance to do, bigger and more audacious things. But not the case. Rough Night, it is in theaters now. But again, check out Andrew's review on cinematary.com. But yeah,
it's too bad.
Yeah, it's good. It's a big bummer. But Lydia, you had a movie that you wanted to talk about.
Okay, I watched this last week. I'm doing my internship at the Yale Film Studies Center, and they do a monthly thing where they show a movie on film. And this month it was Air Force One, starring Harrison Ford as President James Marshall. That sounds correct. He was ranked #1 best fictional president of all time by the Wall Street Journal, beating Bill Pullman from Independence Day and Martin Sheen from The West Wing. So he's everyone's favorite president dad.
Oh yeah.
It's the first time I've ever.
Do you agree with that sentiment? Do you think he's the best fictional president?
Dad. He was a really good dad.
With a lot of pointing.
Is that just what we want in our president?
I
just
think
want
he's
a
better dad than our current president.
Our dad's a little abusive right now.
I think
either
the best,
dad or
the
mom,
best,
clearly, yeah.
The best fictional president is Dennis Haysbert in 24, without a question.
Find where he is on that list.
Taking your word for it.
I'm not going to. Okay.
I think he's the best.
It's the first time I've ever seen Air Force One. It's like a really good 90s action. Just, the Die Hard formula, because it's all in a plane, one location, kind of your average guy against the foreign scary terrorists. These ones are Russian and not German. Because this was when it was like still cool for Russians to be the bad guy, I guess.
It's still pretty cool.
Coming back.
Hacking, emails.
We're so
guys?
Topical. We're really fumbling through this review right now. Sorry, Lydia. Let's just let you talk.
I think it's going great. No, it was actually really fun. In the intro section of before they screened it, Brian had mentioned, that's my boss, that this was kind of the last movie where they did this. They built everything, like for all the flight sequences, they built models in the studio and filmed those and pre-recorded the camera movements, and then actually went up in the sky and filmed like a cloud background, like replicating the camera movements, and then they married the model and the cloud background digitally. And it's probably the last time they did that, because now you can just do it all in a computer. And so it's this weird, like, technical moment, like late 90s, right before digital filming and effects got good enough to kind of not have to do that anymore. And I think it looked really good still. Like, most of the effects held up, because I guess they're kind of practical a little bit. It's like a marriage. So it was impressive. I don't know.
How was Gary Oldman as the antagonist? As the
Gary
Russian
Oldman
guy?
Thing. A lot of yelling. He's real mad about something. Mother Russia, I guess.
I know we talked about in a previous episode kind of the Die Hard formula and when it's effective and when it kind of seems tried and cliched. Where do you think that Air Force One ranks in that kind of spectrum?
I mean, it's not Die Hard, but I think it worked quite nice, I guess, because it came at the end. Because a lot of the Die Hards, they're like on a mountaintop or like on a train or something, not really sealed off locations.
Mm-hmm.
And Wolfgang Petersen, director, actually had quite a few set pieces and did some interesting things. Like, you wouldn't think there was a lot to do if you're trapped on a plane, but he kept it varied, and I was on the edge of my seat. Like, I knew it'd be a happy ending, but like I was worried. So that's fine. William H. Macy's in it, and I love him.
Wolfgang Petersen, underrated director. The simple pleasures of a Wolfgang Petersen movie. You just catch it on cable in the afternoon. Air Force One, In the Line of Fire, The Perfect Storm, Troy, Poseidon.
Oh yeah.
You just turn it on and it's like it's big and it's splashy and it's thrilling, but you can also just kind of tune out.
Perfect Storm.
And like
and it's
really
just very
technically
classical
adept.
and
Like,
boom.
it was good filmmaking.
Yeah, it's just like it's just tight.
I feel like we could use some Wolfgang Petersen directing in today's blockbusters.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so it's him with Michael Bauhaus as the cinematographer. Yeah, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't he just die recently? Yeah, he did.
Yes, very recently.
Rest in peace. One of the greats.
Air Force One.
Well, if where can people watch Air Force One other than on TNT on like a Sunday afternoon?
Other than not on film, like iTunes, library.
I guess. I guess the library.
I would assume.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, because if you Google Air Force One, it just tells me about the airplane. That's not what I wanted.
All right, cool.
Here's a quick tidbit about this movie. When I look up Air Force One 1997, there's a headline from the Hollywood Reporter that says Donald Trump asked to stop using Air Force One music for campaign, and apparently at campaign events he was playing the score to the film, and the producers kept demanding that he not play the score.
Ooh, that's another thing. The score was actually really good because they don't make scores like this anymore. Like, it actually had a recognizable theme.
Who was let's see, who's the score?
Jerry Goldsmith, yeah.
Jerry Goldsmith, who did Planet of the Apes, Chinatown,
he's really good.
Alien.
He's great.
God.
Yeah,
They don't score action movies like this anymore.
I guess if you want to watch Air Force One, just put some comfy clothes on, be on your couch on a Saturday afternoon, and I'm sure TNT will help you out.
President Dad.
Nathan, you had a couple movies you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I have two. I'll keep the first one brief. It's a new release called Paris Can Wait, directed by Eleanor Coppola. Most people may know her as the wife of Francis Ford Coppola, mother of Sofia Coppola, but she is a very accomplished filmmaker in her own right, a documentarian. She did the film Hearts of Darkness, A Filmmaker's Apocalypse, which is kind of about the production troubles that faced Francis Ford Coppola while making Apocalypse Now in the late 1970s. And she's also done a lot of other kind of making of and behind the scenes documentaries, many about her family's movies, because they like to keep it a family affair. The Coppolas, they got their pasta, they got their wine, and they got their movies. You know how they do it. And then they got also Nicolas Cage. So this movie stars Diane Lane and Alec Baldwin. Diane Lane is the wife of a big shot Hollywood producer who is at the Cannes Film Festival, and he has to go around Europe and visit the locations and sets for films he's working on, and he's just busy, and he promised her a vacation, and he's not spending very much time with her. And she's supposed to go on ahead of him to Paris while he goes to visit some investors or something in Budapest, and a business associate of his, played by Arnaud Virard, offers to take her by car to. It's just a quick couple-hour drive to Paris from Cannes, but it gets stretched out over 2 days because this man just loves life, just the simple pleasures. He'll pull over at a restaurant and they'll just have a big splashy dinner, pull over in a field and have a picnic and see some ancient aqueducts and smell some flowers and really appreciate the small things in life. So this movie is just like 75% beautiful looking food, like paintings, museums. I have not seen this film yet, Claire's Camera by Hong Sang-soo, but it seems kind of similar because in that movie, Isabelle Huppert is just kind of walking around taking pictures of things, and Diane Lane just walks around to take pictures of things, and we see her photographs on screen, which is a really kind of nice device. And the pictures are all framed very well and are very pleasant to look at. So we're just kind of like soaking in this culture, and there's a little bit of kind of will they or won't they, just kind of fun, romantic hijinks. It's kind of maybe a little bit uncomfortable for some people because it's kind of making light of infidelity. But I think the fact that it's directed by an older woman, about an older woman, kind of about this like low period in a middle-aged marriage, I think maybe that, and it seems kind of grounded in personal experience. Eleanor Coppola kind of spending time with her husband while he was on big shoots and big productions. I think that makes it more okay and less worrisome. Whereas I think if a man had directed this movie, it might come off kind of lecherous and weird. But it's just like so pleasant. It's just this like nice pastry of a movie, very delightful, very light. There's some kind of deeper emotions and sentiments and dramatic moments where we learn some kind of very intimate personal things about the characters, which kind of prevent it from being this totally superfluous escapist movie. It kind of brings you back to reality. But I just thought it was kind of a beautiful ode to life, I guess you could say, to the finer things. There's a great moment where we're looking at all of these different cheeses, and then the camera pulls out and we see that there's just this humongous basket of cheese next to their table. And I just love looking at cheese and thinking about eating cheese. So it's just a good time at the movies. Get a nice Bordeaux after, maybe sneak in a pony bottle or two with you. Just have a good time. Take your mom. It's a great movie, I think, to see with your mom, to see with your grandma. It's just a wonderful time at the movies. It's in theaters now. Paris Can Wait. Don't wait to see it because people have been sleeping on it, so it may not be there for much longer. So go see it. Yeah. That's all I have to say about that one. So on to the total inverse of that movie. I also watched this week Inland Empire by David Lynch because I'm trying to kind of cross some final checks off on the David Lynch list. And, I've been keeping up with Twin Peaks Season 3. A lot of people have said, oh, this is like David Lynch in his Inland Empire mode, and I hadn't seen Inland Empire. And also, it had kind of been in my brain ever since a few years ago. Dylan chose it as his pick for the best movie of all time on our podcast where we did that. If anybody here listening remembers that episode or wants to go revisit it. So this movie is kind of a mammoth juggernaut of a film, 3 hours long, filmed on like a dishwasher DV consumer grade camera, it's just like very just compressed and ugly and just immediately from the beginning. It's like there's people speaking in Polish, there's like people in rabbit suits. It's like, what the heck's going on? There's strange visitors who who knows, I don't know. It's freaky. It's beyond description, beyond summation. I guess the best way you can sum it up, I'm just going to briefly read the 2 sentences on Letterboxd about this just to give you a general idea what the movie's about. So An actress's perception of reality becomes increasingly distorted as she finds herself falling for her co-star in a remake of an unfinished Polish production that was supposedly cursed. So this movie had some like Polish backing and investing. So parts of the movie are filmed in Poland, and there are characters who speak Polish just kind of strangely, and Polish actors who speak English with very heavy accents. And it just gives it this uncanny feeling. So that's maybe the best description you can give, although it's kind of not really even about that. But I think the best way to unlock this movie is at least, I'm sure he probably said this in other interviews, but I happened to recently listen to an interview between David Lynch and Alex Jones from around the time this movie came out. Alex Jones, our favorite pundit, I guess. The oracle to the president, you might say. This is an extremely topical podcast. So Alex Jones kept asking David Lynch he was like, but what's it about? What does this mean? This movie, I don't know. And David Lynch is just like, well, Alex, the subtitle, it's a woman in trouble, and that's what it's about. It's about a woman in trouble, and so that is kind of that's the subtitle of the movie. That's the best way to approach it. It's about a woman in trouble. Obviously, on one level, that means it's about Laura Dern because she is the woman who's featured most in the movie. But there are a lot of other women in various troubled circumstances. There are prostitutes on the streets of Hollywood. There are women in Poland who are maybe kind of being prostituted, maybe being kind of trafficked out of the country. There are abused housewives in the kind of just small town USA, and then there's the glamorous movie star who is kind of abused by the industry around her. And there's no clear narrative or plot connection. All of these things are just kind of rooted in feelings, rooted in images. That's how David Lynch has always said that he works. He thinks of it. He's captivated and obsessed with an image or with a feeling, and he communicates that to the furthest extent of its reaches. And he's not maybe trying to in the beginning make a statement, but when he creates this fully formed product or final kind of whatever final creation, it maybe says something and has maybe come to say something through those feelings, through those images. So I think that's kind of the route, which is very difficult. It's very difficult to approach a movie, especially one that's 3 hours long, in those terms, and just being willing to kind of give yourself to feeling. But that, I think, is the best way to do this. And so I think that what David Lynch is doing is drawing kind of a history of women in trouble, not a literal chronological through line, but through feelings, through emotions, kind of dissolving these women's stories into kind of one historical through line. And he also, I think he does the same thing with the visuals, with the kind of more cinematic techniques. There's a great podcast going on by The Film Stage about the new season of Twin Peaks, if you're watching that, called Dark Mood Woods, hosted by my friends Ethan Vespi and Nick Newman. And Nick Newman has talked a lot on that podcast about how this new season of Twin Peaks reminds him of the later works of the Portuguese filmmaker Manuel de Oliveira, who is kind of the longest living filmmaker. He was working up until I think his late 90s or maybe even until he was 100. And he's the only filmmaker to go from the silent era to working with digital cameras. But even when he was working with digital, he was kind of using these more primitive silent film techniques and stitching those together with digital. And a lot of the effects in this are those kind of early rudimentary techniques, the kind of there'll be two characters in a frame and then there's a dissolve and one of them disappears, that kind of Georges Méliès trick. Or kind of superimpositions, which we've seen a lot of those in the new season of Twin Peaks. So he's using this kind of cutting edge, dirty, grimy, digital, this harsh lighting to go along with that. But he's also pairing it with just these techniques that are very obviously, constructed. They don't sell us on their reality, but they sell us on a feeling, and they give us this kind of emotional resonance. A lot of people have said that Guy Maddin, who's one of my favorite filmmakers, is the David Lynch of Canada. I think this is the David Lynch movie that's closest to Guy Maddin's work, just because of that kind of communion with silent cinema. So I think that this is a work that is...
I just interjecting there for a second?
Sorry,
that's an interesting comparison no, you're good, that I haven't thought about before, just because I don't know how to exactly deal with Guy Maddin's movies yet, or I haven't gotten to a place to where I can process some of that. But to think about being overwhelmed by all of these images and people who you don't have the context David Lynch has of those things, and so it just becomes this overwhelming, dislocating thing. Like, My Winnipeg is just this borderline gross central experience of all these things that make sense to Guy Madden, but it's just like, where is he at?
It's just kind of like
that's
his movies. I feel like you're just kind of falling into them, like especially The Forbidden Room, where you have like 33 stories going on simultaneously, and they keep like, it's just like you're plunging further and further into this hole, and you don't even know where you are anymore, and you're kind of even questioning if you're awake at a certain point, which is kind of how I felt with Inland Empire too, especially in some of these more, for lack of a better word, surreal moments where like Terry Crews shows up for a second, or like there's a Beck song playing, and like there's a dance number to the Locomotion, and then this like this end credit sequence that I don't even want to like quote unquote spoil for you, because it's just such a like, I don't know, passionate, expressive, cinematic moment. Just this like bizarre but also just forceful musical display, I guess, for lack of a better phrase.
Yes.
You know, and the movie ends on such an emotionally clear note to me, and kind of communicates both through sound and through image this distinct feeling to you of almost this kind of joy, which is in such opposition to the rest of the movie, which is so dark, which is so grimy and uncomfortable, that it's like...
Communion's probably a good word for this.
Yeah, it's like it ends on such a clear, sustained note that I don't mind having been lost in the bog for like 3 hours, because I know where I'm at when it ends, and everything is clear and kind of grounded again for me, at least not in a literal what happened sense, but in an emotional sense. I know where we are, and I know how I should be feeling. And to me, that's the kind of the real essence of great filmmaking, that you can take the viewer around on this roller coaster, just whip them around, and at the end everybody is in the same, well, you know, I'm sure there are people who watch this and are just fucking hate it, but if it works for you, it's kind of like you're there, you're in the spot David Lynch wants you to be in. It's this I mean, you know, he's big into meditation, and I feel like it's this kind of clear like nirvana almost, if you give way to it, if you really let it work on you.
The part that I'm sad to think that it could be really big of a disconnect for people, but if a lot of the techniques and how the narrative quote unquote plays out, it can feel very dislocating, and I can imagine that alienate some folks. But go along for the ride, and it will take you places good and bad. Yeah.
So that's about all I think I can say about Inland Empire, because it's hard to be specific about it. It's vagueness is kind of like,
play Where's Waldo with Terry Crews. It'll be crazy. It'll be like, what is Terry Crews doing in this movie? And it's great.
It's something. So yeah, that's available on DVD, your public library, all those good places.
Yeah, and I would also recommend going back. I'm trying to pull up which episode, Dylan, you talked about the best movie in, but I would recommend going back to that, because that was a good point to I know that you went a lot more in depth on that. I think it was episode 57 and 58. One of those you were chatting in. But we're gonna take a short break. We'll be back talking Meet Me in St. Louis after this.
Hey Cinematariats, this is your co-host Lydia Creech with an important message during this break in the show. Cinematary would like you to know that we do not want your money, and we don't want to place ads in the show at this time either. That's not why we do this. We do it because we enjoy each other's company, and we want to bring you our pure, unadulterated opinions on the world of cinema. However, there are a few things you can do to help out the show that we would greatly appreciate. First, leave us a review on iTunes, 4 or 5 stars only, to help us reach more listeners per the algorithm gods. Secondly, send us a tweet at Cinematary, or better yet, send us an email at zach@cinematary.com. That's Zach, Z-A-C-H, so we can hear from you guys for a change. I'd especially like to hear if you're a human and not an android who also likes Blade Runner, or maybe you have a suggestion of a movie you would really like to hear our opinions on. Regardless, let us know your thoughts and we will read them out and respond to them on future episodes of the show. Finally, please share the show with friends and members of your family who you think would enjoy listening to and participating in our film discussions that we bring to you guys every week. So, to recap, review, send us your thoughts through Twitter and email, and please share with your friends and family. We would greatly appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show.
Me in St. Louis, Louis, meet me at the fair. Don't tell me the lights are shining any place but there. We will dance the hoochie coochie. You will be my tootsie woopsie if you will meet me in St. Louis, Louis, meet me at...
And we're back with part 2 of episode 149 of Cinematary. In this part, we will be continuing our Young Critics Watch Old Movies series with 1944's Meet Me in St. Louis. It's directed by Vincent Minnelli, and it stars Judy Garland, Margaret O'Brien, Mary Astor, Lucille Bremer, Tom Drake, and Marjorie Main. The movie is divided into a series of seasonal vignettes, starting with the summer of 1903, and it relates the story of a year in the life of the Smith family in St. Louis, leading up to the opening of the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, most commonly referred to as the World's Fair, in the spring of 1904. The movie was adapted by Irving Brecher, and I love this name, Fred F. Finkelhoff. Because what asshole parent was like FFF? That's what we need. From a series of short stories by Sally Benson, originally published in the New Yorker magazine under the title 5135 Kensington, and it was later adapted into novel form as, again, the same title, Meet Me in St. Louis. Minnelli later married Judy Garland after meeting her on the set of this film. The score for the movie was adapted by Roger Edens, who also served as an uncredited associate producer. Georgie Stoll conducted the orchestrations of Conrad Salinger. Some of the songs in the film are from around the time of the St. Louis Exposition, while others were written for the movie. Some of the hits include the Trolley Song, The Boy Next Door, and Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, which, as Lydia and I were talking about before the podcast, this is the movie like that song came from. There was a lost song, actually. Judy Garland had a pre-recording of Boys and Girls Like You and Me that survived. The pre-recording survived, but the film footage of it has been lost. According to Turner Classic Movie, the entire cast and crew were immediately impressed with Minnelli's attention to detail in every shot. He had consulted author Sally Benson on how the interiors of the Smith house should look, and she had provided a wealth of first-hand information. As a result, the look of each set was near perfection, according to the time period. Quote, the only anachronisms, according to actress Mary Astor in her 1967 memoir, A Life on Film, were the girls' long swinging hairdos. Girls put their hair up as soon as they got out of pigtails. The first instance they were allowed to by reluctant parents. It was a symbol like the first long pants for boys. Judy Garland, who at 21 years old was transitioning into more adult roles, received a whole new look for Meet Me in St. Louis. She had always been insecure about her appearance, having begun her career in the movies during her awkward adolescent years, and had faced much criticism for her fluctuating weight and imperfect features. By the time she played Esther Smith, however, Garland had slimmed down and was emerging as a natural beauty, even if she hadn't realized it yet. When she went to MGM makeup artist Dottie Ponadol, who was assigned to the film, Garland showed Ponadol the tricks she had been using up to then whenever she appeared on camera. Caps for her teeth and rubber discs she inserted into her nose to change its shape. To Garland's surprise, Ponadol quickly disposed of the items, quote, "You don't need all this junk. You're a pretty girl. Let's see what we can do." With that, Ponadol set about transforming Garland by enhancing the natural beauty that was already there. Quote, "I raised her eyebrows a bit and gave her a fuller lower lip. I put on a makeup base that was pretty to the eye. I knew it would be pretty to the camera too. I tweezed out some of the hairline." Judy Garland was also indulging in some bad habits during the making of the movie. She would complain of illnesses and headaches, often arriving late to the set and keeping the cast and crew waiting for hours. Quote, Judy, this is from Mary Astor, quote, Judy was no longer a rotund little giggler, but her growing up was not maturing. Astor had played Garland's mother once before in the 1938 film Listen, Darling. She went on, quote, the fun was still there and she seemed to have great energy, but it was intense, driven, tumultuous, anxious. But it was intense, driven, tumultuous, anxious. She was working way over the capacities of any human being. She was recording at night and playing in the picture in the day, and people got annoyed when she was late on the set, and when she got jittery and weepy with fatigue, including myself. I often felt that her behavior during this period was due to big shot-titis and very unprofessional. Making a movie was a communal effort. Everyone depended on everyone else, and for one person to keep 150 other workers sitting around on a soundstage while she fiddled with her lipstick in her dressing room was just plain bad manners. One day, Mary Astor had had enough of the inconsiderate behavior and decided to give Garland a piece of her mind. Quote, I walked into Judy's portable dressing room one tense morning, and she greeted me with her usual cheery, hi, Mom. I sat down on the couch while she went on primping and said, Judy, what the hell's happened to you? You were a trooper once. She stared at me. I went on. You have kept the entire company out there waiting for 2 hours, waiting for you to favor us with your presence. You know, we're stuck. There's nothing we can do without you at the moment. She giggled and said, yeah, that's what everybody's been telling me. That bugged me, and I said, well, then either get the hell on the set or I'm going home. She grabbed me by the hand, and her face had crumpled up. I don't sleep, Mom. And I said, well, go to bed earlier than like we all have to do. You're not some damn special baby. And stalked out into my own unthinking huge dudgeon. It was some years later before I really knew what she had been going through. Garland also hated rehearsing for her scenes, and Vincent Minnelli liked to have a lot of rehearsals. She took to sneaking off the set early in order to avoid them. She'd get in her car and zoom off before I had a chance to call a run-through, Minnelli later said. I'd phoned to the studio gate to intercept her. At the time, Time magazine reviewed the film saying it was one of the year's prettiest pictures. Adding Technicolor has seldom been more affectionately used in its registrations of the sober mahoganies and tender muslins and benign gaslights of the period. Now and then, too, the film gets well beyond the charm of mere tableau for short flights in the Ephorian of genuine domestic poetry. Ugh. Come on, Time. These triumphs are creditable mainly to the intensity and grace of Margaret O'Brien and to the ability of director Minnelli and company to get the best out of her. In 2005, Time listed this as one of the 100 greatest movies of all time, reflecting on it, saying it had wonderful songs and a sweetly unneurotic performance by Judy Garland. Despite its nostalgic charm, Minnelli infused the piece with a dreamy, occasionally surreal darkness, and it remains, for some of us, the greatest of American movie musicals. So yeah, I know in the past we kind of had a series where we were looking at the movie musical, and really, Vincent Minnelli and Judy Garland are two staples. I feel like we probably kind of left out when we did that series back a year ago or so. So what were kind of your impressions of this, and in the context of other classical Hollywood musicals that you've watched in your time?
I've been going through some of the earlier ones, especially the 30s, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers dance musicals and stuff like that. And, just coming off of that, I was kind of surprised how, well integrated the music was, or, how seamlessly integrated the music was into the movie's narrative, right? The main theme of whatever Meet Me in St. Louis is just like a tune that's hummed and whistled and sung by just about everybody in the household except maybe the dad and mom, right? And I don't know, I guess that was my first impression of it as a musical, is how surprised I was that it just kind of is goes from just them doing pretty ordinary stuff, putting on clothes or looking in the mirror or whatever, and they just start humming a tune, and it's just kind of a musical at that point, right? And they bounce off each other. I guess the first time it starts, it's with Agnes, the third daughter, right?
Or was it Tootie?
No, I don't think. I think Tootie happens after, because she's with the ice.
Okay.
But like Agnes is singing it, and then she goes in the house, and then the grandfather continues it, and the grandfather is singing it, and then he looks out the window, and then Rose and Esther and they are singing it, and they take it into the house, and I don't know. There's just it's basically a musical number, but not like as formal as everybody gets in the same room and it's a song and dance number, right? I don't know. But I thought that was really neat.
Lydia, did you have some thoughts?
It reminded me a lot of like 60s musical. I was thinking of like My Fair Lady and Mary Poppins. It's just like the gorgeous Technicolor. But this is from the 40s. I guess I haven't seen that many Judy Garland musicals. I've seen Wizard of Oz and that's it. So,
and yeah, that's a pretty different like color palette, right? This one's like a lot more pastel.
Yeah.
I think though that in both of those movies that Judy Garland is filmed in the same way. It's like it will be kind of direct. The camera will be looking directly at her, and she'll be looking up into the sky, like not really looking at anything, just kind of blank. And then the camera will do a high angle looking at her, and she's still not like looking right at the audience or anything. She's just kind of looking off, like singing to God or something. And it's like really soft focus. And
I was telling Zach before the podcast started how it's got like that gorgeous 3-point classical Hollywood lighting on those shots, and she looks like an angel. It's like a literal halo around her, and she's so pretty, and so I felt so bad. Like that anecdote was told at the beginning. So
with
like,
with Mary Astor?
With the makeup artist. It's like, Judy Garland.
Yeah.
So, no, it was great, and she was great in it.
I also noticed, speaking of Mary Poppins, I wrote down when I was taking some notes about this, that it has kind of the same plot as Mary Poppins, where like, I mean, this is way more incidental and episodic, but it's all also about like softening up the dad, which is the same plot as Mary Poppins, and the costumes look the same kind of.
Don't exactly get the magical nanny though.
Nope, you don't. But there is, speaking of like fantastical stuff, I thought this movie was actually really weird, and I wasn't expecting that. Like all this stuff with the youngest sister and Halloween, and
like the Halloween sequence.
It was just like at a certain point, I was kind of like
out of nowhere.
I didn't know what movie I was watching. I was like,
that was a very strange sequence. It takes a really strange turn because you have the more atypical musical moments, and you have the whole storyline with the two older sisters, and one played by Judy Garland, and they're interested in the various guys and all that stuff, and then they cut to the autumn, and you have the sisters go out there, and first off they get dressed and they walk outside.
Set stuff on
there's
fire.
just kids around a bonfire. And I was just thinking, like, remember the good old days when we could have a bonfire in the front yard? Like that sounds safe.
What?
I was just like, what the hell was wrong with you people? It just takes this very like strange turn, and then they have the whole sequence where they're throwing flour on people, and she throws the flour on the guy, and then you have the whole accident happen, and it's just
that stressed me out.
It's the thing with she accuses John of hitting her, and I couldn't figure out for a while if that was supposed to be some kind of like euphemism for like him molesting her or something. Like, no, I just felt like that was what that was hinting at, and then I was like, no, never mind, that's not. But it was just like very strange, and I wasn't expecting any of that at all from this movie. And I kind of I guess I feel like a lot of movies, not just musicals but general movies from this time, have those kind of weird subplots with children, and I just it doesn't make sense to me, especially in this movie where it's like the subplot with the child is not maybe for laughs. It's like she's going around saying she's going to kill people in like really horrible ways, and it
reminded me of like the kind of some of the child the kind of dark child subplots in like To Kill a
Yeah.
Mockingbird, where it becomes a very different movie
So-
when those moments are happening. That's what it kind
when
of
it's
directly
her
reminded me
point
of.
View, I mean, she's a weird character as it is, as like a precocious kid that has a
Like
pretty
a morbid child.
Thank you. Yeah, wicked, morbid sense of humor. I mean, regardless, I mean, I was kind of back and forth on that, but yeah, when it's in October and it goes to her point of view, and all of a sudden she's around other kids, that she gets really quiet though, right? Like it's just right until like I guess her quote unquote rite of passage of killing somebody. That she's just
I'm the most horrible.
yeah, I'm the bravest and most horrible. That then, you know, she comes into her usual 2D self or whatever. But also, I did love how that moment with the flower, throwing the flower at Mr. Barakov, I think was the name, right? And after she, like, slings the flower on his face and he just kind of harumps. And as she runs away, but it kind of stays on him, and it's just the dog eating it. And he's just like, what is happening? And there's just something about how, up to that point, how catastrophic it felt. How, like, you know, it was building up to this terrifying moment. And then it's just like, oh, right, she's just a child throwing some flour on some dude. And it's just this goofus thing. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm glad it was able to do both of those tones and feelings, so...
Some of the I was looking at what some people I follow on Letterboxd say about this movie. Gosh, I cannot speak about this movie after I watched it, just because you know that's what you do. And I felt like a lot of people took this movie as being kind of socially conservative and like having this yearning for a kind of small town. And obviously, at the end of the movie, they decide to reject the city and embrace the you know, the beauty of the small town of St. Louis, you know, but I also thought the movie had this kind of like future or at least kind of forward looking streak to it, because it's all about the like really what it enacts the whole movie is that the World's Fair is coming in 7 months, and so you have this kind of like hope on the horizon for this sort of, I don't know, I felt like a lot of people talk about musicals from this era as being kind of utopic, and I think that the stuff about Halloween and The Younger Sister maybe breaks that assumption a little bit, but still you have this kind of looking ahead to this some kind of future paradise that is all about, you know, because the World's Fair was all about like new inventions and the future and the modern world. And
you also kind of feel a little bit of a breaking of the norm. I mean, they still kind of keep to what they are most accustomed with in terms of kind of the dating ritual with Judy Garland and Lucille Brimmer's characters, but at the same time they're also kind of, it seems like they're a little bit weaning off what would be, you know, typical in that day and age, because there's the scene where Lucille Brimmer's character and Judy Garland are sitting there and they're getting ready to go to some function, and she's talking about how, I'm gonna kiss what is his name? I'm gonna kiss Tom or John. I'm gonna kiss John. And she's and the sister is just like, you know, oh, you can't kiss a man before you're engaged, and she goes, oh, well, I'm just gonna do it. I might as well just get it out of the way. And then you have the sister who's also, you know, taking the long distance phone calls from the guy, and it seems like they're progressing in that sense rather than, you know, courting each other in person. I think that there's a little bit of you can kind of
phone call. Let's not.
yeah, I was
very
thinking
loud
of
phone call.
Gordon Cole from Twin Peaks during that part. I felt like that was him on the phone. And also how the maid says, you can't get proposed to over an invention. I just really like that
Got some good
line.
one-liners. Oh my god.
yeah.
You know, she would hate millennials. I can tell you that.
Oh, she would despise us. But I think that the movie did have this as you described it, Nathan, this kind of eye for the future, because when you think of what the World's Fair kind of represents, it's this you know, conglomerate that is, you know, has an interest in what can improve and what can in doing stuff that kind of breaks the world out. It was introducing people to cultures and inventions and different things from all over the place, and that's kind of opening up the worldview. It would be opening up the worldview of these characters. And so I think that the fact that they are anticipating that and kind of really embracing that shows that it's a movie that's not, even though they have a sense of being set in their ways, they're also looking to expand their worldview just from that whole fare at the end of the movie.
I think too, this movie was made during World War II, and I feel like it wasn't until kind of after World War II and maybe after the 60s or 70s that I feel like we kind of became a lot more jaded and cynical and less optimistic about advances in technology. Like, we all love our phones and computers and stuff, but I think most people kind of like acknowledge a negative impact or bemoan them or look for some kind of alternate way of being. But I feel like both in what this movie's about and in its kind of embrace of new technology and of really vibrant color in a time when that was still pretty uncommon is kind of like still being optimistic about technology. And I mean, I think it like acknowledges that there's dark stuff in the world and dark stuff in these traditional structures, but it's saying like, hey, we've got these new inventions and they'll change the way things are, but maybe they'll bring a brighter future to, and because technology was going to win the war, and people were excited about automation, and
I mean, it kind of goes in
kind of just
like that, because I mean, World War I like really horrified people with what we were doing with technology and trench warfare, and then kind of at the end of World War II.
So I mean, this being set before all of that, though, right?
Yeah. I think this is kind of this like window.
Like that, so it's like at a high point.
Yeah, it's this like window period where it's like people maybe have kind of forgotten a little bit of the horrors of technology in World War One, but it hasn't quite hit them again.
Yeah,
I may just be forgetting, but were there cars in this? Yeah, I mean, there was. It was
horse-drawn carriages.
Yeah, accessible, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and trolleys.
Cross
in 1903
connecting thing of all of a sudden, being able. Well, I mean, interstates aren't a thing. That's even faster than that. There's kind of a sense of speed that's different as the excitement of being able to communicate loudly with somebody over telephone. So yeah, like a precipice point, maybe. Yeah.
One thing I would like to kind of dig in on with this movie is that I think we've touched on it, but it is kind of seeking this sense of this sense of community and really affirming that this is something that people enjoy. But at the same time, I don't feel like, I don't know, to me, outside of really the Halloween sequence, you don't really get a sense of the community. The whole story kind of takes place, in or outside of the Smith family house. And so at the end, when they're like, we want to stay here, of course, we've only been really in this bubble of a place, and that bubble really didn't include anybody outside of the next door neighbor who was a love interest of Judy Garland's character, and the brief stint with the neighbor who they throw flour in. And so I don't know, it's almost a little bit like, it's almost like the message is a little hypocritical, because they're talking about how great this community is, but we really never get a sense of that community. Is that something that you guys saw?
I'm trying to think of it like from the very beginning, that there was a sense of almost what you're saying, Zach, that there were, the way that the seasons are represented in the house, and then learning mostly about this family. I think, yeah. Well. So I mean, there's parts to where there is community. I mean, there's the part in Christmas time. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because it's a good point, but so much of this movie for me is them trying to stay with this sense of family, though, right? And it's insular as it may be, right?
Yeah, it's insulating through their experiences, which is fine, because I mean they're the characters of the movie. Yeah. But
I think that so many, maybe it is kind of then hypocritical, by enforcing this traditional structure of the family when it also kind of claims to critique other traditional structures. But I also think that just generally kind of musicals of this mode and time where a lot of the songs already existed. I think on this kind of like exterior
whistling the same
level
tune
is sort of enforcing this idea of community by saying like, hey, this musical has songs that people already know, that are already popular songs, so we all know them, so we have this kind of communal culture, and this it's this like mass culture that's kind of sold as being something that we all share when maybe it's not. It's just kind of presented that way and given to us that way, which I think was maybe kind of like speaks again to like it being made during World War II, this time of kind of like a national project of cultural unification, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm thinking of it through the lens of, after watching a lot of the Jacques Demy musicals, he, one of the influences for, he was kind of looking back on it was some of these, Vincent Minnelli movies, and you can see, similarities in these. But when I think of those, I feel like you get a personality of the people around what just the main story, and that's just one of the things I was thinking about with Meet Me in St. Louis, is that, even in like the party sequence, you don't ever really get, it's a small moment, but I'm thinking of like the party sequence in The Graduate, and you have the plastics guy, and you have all these other kind of voices coming out, but you never really got any voices in this one. You just you still stuck to the main characters, and I felt like it could have at least to kind of affirm some of this community feeling. It could have used some of that where there just different voices were popping up. It didn't have to be long, but at least shows that there's other people around other than the Smith family.
I think that's one of the things that Jacques Demy does really well, because I think of like in Umbrellas of Cherbourg, that movie is like so colorful and delightful to look at, but it's also so tragic, and there's like, it is on one level, on a visual level, very escapist to look at, but around it, it's like you've got the Algerian War, like, is very obviously impacting the characters and all these other larger things, whereas this movie, I feel like it's kind of like, I knew it took place around the turn of the century, but it almost feels like it could take place before that, especially because the World's Fair is like the Louisiana Purchase theme. So like when I towards the end, somebody says that when they go to the World's Fair, that it's the Louisiana Purchase theme, and I'm like, wait, is this like at the beginning of the 19th century or something? Like, it kind of takes place in this floating space where it's like, I mean, sure, there is some sense of the future in the distance, but it's not culturally specific in the way that Umbrellas of Cherbourg is.
I was just thinking that it's also probably significant that it's set in not like a small town, but like New York City and Broadway, and then Hollywood musicals, like musicals about musicals and the entertainment world. It's like that's a very insular kind of maybe off-putting to just your regular American. Maybe so it's like it's out in the world that like the rest of the country lives in, sort of.
The flyover countries, states, as they say, not countries. With those East Coast and West Coast elitists looking down. We don't need no Aaron Sorkin telling us what to do. What? I was kind of thinking, excuse my my terminology, but I was sort of thinking this movie is kind of about a dad who's getting cucked by his own family. So,
oh my God.
There might be something for the edgelords here.
Well, to be fair, I did laugh a lot at the very beginning when you're introduced to the dad, and he comes home and they're like, hey, we're going to have dinner early. And he's like, why? And they're like, because the maid's sister's having a tough time. And he's like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to go take a bath and we're going to eat at the normal time. I was like, all right, well, that takes care of that.
Yeah, and then he's like, he demands to be a part of it.
He does.
But the dad does though get like his moment though with you and I and his wife, right? That is supposed to, bring the family back together again after he drops the bomb of, hey, yo, dog, we're moving to New York, pack your bags. And I think, there's something to that. I didn't 100%. I was on board with the feeling, but I don't think it resolved most of the feeling right up until the end, whatever. So
it's almost interesting. I was thinking, because you mentioned the Halloween scene again, And I was thinking about like in E.T., there's that Halloween scene where just like all the kids are going fucking crazy, egging cars and just being awful and having a grand old time. And I was kind of thinking about how, you know, so many Steven Spielberg movies, there's like the awful kind of absent dad, like in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where he straight up leaves his family over the things that he sees in mashed potatoes. I was like, man, this is kind of like an earlier version of that, of just the sort of absent, loves his work, kind of not so great with his family, which is very weird for a movie that's like, you know.
Well, he's, I guess, close. He's kind of close, except there's a little bit more. He's relatable to the father in Mary Poppins, who kind of goes away to work and then comes back and is missing most of the action. But I feel like in that movie, he's at least given a little bit, I don't know, more. I don't know the right word, but.
And even Mary Poppins is connected to the outside world with this like issue of, you know, the women's suffrage, which I don't think that every musical needs that. And I love plenty of musicals that don't have that, but it is kind of, I don't know. This feels very, as beautiful as it is, very maybe insidious message or not so great message. Complicated, thorny, problematic.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, any quick closing thoughts on Meet Me in St. Louis?
I got a couple things. No, seriously, there's a couple. One, Vincent Minnelli, I think it's hard to talk about it without having the movie in front of me. Like, moves the camera with characters so seamlessly is, I think, really impressive to me. Like, how he can just bring you into a scene by following a character. I know that sounds maybe simplistic or obvious, but the fact that kind of like keeps the energy going. So like
no, I get you. Like the trolley sequence, the way he follows Judy Garland around is like, I was just marveling at that. I thought that was an amazing sequence.
Yeah, or even a simpler one is like how he gets you into that party scene at their house, right, where it goes with just this establishing outside shot, and you know you recognize the character of Rose, and you follow Rose into the house, and it's, you know, communicating that he does like medium shots where it's just like upper torso, and it's mostly people communicating in two shots and shot and reverse shot, stuff like that, but not a lot of not getting all up and close, right? I don't know, I guess I was just surprised by that.
Whenever he does, it's on Judy, and like that gorgeous lighting again, and like feels a little out of place, but yeah. So yeah, to your point, Zach, earlier about needing like more of an outside world, I would again recommend The Clock, the movie he does right after this, which is crazy because it's about going to New York, a person who's never been there before, and being pushed around inside of a big town like that, and hanging out with Judy Garland for an hour and a half, and you get all of the, you know, side characters that are interacting with the two main protagonists or whatever, and so I think that might be up your alley if you feel like it's missing from this for you, that insularity, which again is crazy to think about, that this is the movie he does right after that, because it is like almost a companion piece to it.
I think it was just a super weird movie. Great to look at. Love Judy Garland. Judy Garland has a beautiful voice, I think, but weird movie. Weird movie.
I cried really hard during the Christmas stuff. It got me good. I was like, oh, I'm done.
I don't think this is my favorite Vincent Minnelli movie that I've watched. I think I like the Bandwagon a lot more. That one has a little bit more going for it, but I did really enjoy this, and I think that it had a lot of great elements. I echo Dylan what you said at the beginning, how well they integrate all the songs into the movie. I think that's something that, especially with musicals, that people will complain about, where, you know, it's like they have to stop the movie and then have a song and then, you know, turn it back on. And I felt like I agree with your point that they really it seemed pretty seamless. Everything flowed really well. and that I guess it helped to have that kind of gliding camera that Minnelli had. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty great, and it's also nice to kind of dig into some outside of the Wizard of Oz movies with Judy Garland. All right, well, I guess that'll wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/cinematary, on Twitter at handle @cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/cinematary, where we post all of the movies that we talked about in this episode. Right now on cinematary.com, it's I guess it's Andrew Swafford week, as Andrew has a review of Rough Night, but he also has his latest video essay on Scarlett Johansson. I would recommend going and checking it out. It's a very comprehensive look at the actress and kind of her how she kind of has crafted this specific image for herself while working in small movies and big movies, and kind of how she's taken her career in the direction she did. I feel like if you're a fan of ScarJo, or if you're just in general you're kind of interested in the kind of the anatomy of an actor, I think it's worth checking out. But next week we will actually be taking a little break, a 1-week break from our Young Critics series. We're going to be celebrating episode 150, and if you've listened to Cinematary for a long time, we're going to be doing the same thing we did for 50 and 100, and we're going to be doing a movie swap. I think everybody in this episode will be back, and then we'll have Andrew as well. But we've started picking our movies and everything. It's going to be great. Of course, like usual, we're going to hold that until we'll hold that for you guys until we actually post the episode. But as usual, it'll be a little bit longer. I'll make sure to break it into 2 parts. But I think it's always those episodes are always a lot of fun when we have people picking movies for the other person. Nathan's not picking Jean Dielman for me, so I can't offend him this time. But thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next week.